Welcome back to our monthly Tango Alpha Lima Be the One podcast. I'm your host, Amy Forsyth, and I'll be here on the first of each month with guests who provide expertise, resources, and peer-to-peer support as part of the American Legion's Be the One initiative to prevent suicide within the veteran community. Learn more at betheone.org, and let's get today's conversation started. Today, our special guests are Marcus and Amber Capone. They're the founders of Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, or VETS, an organization that provides resources, research, and advocacy for U.S. Special Operations veterans seeking psychedelic-assisted therapies. After 13 years and numerous combat deployments as a Navy SEAL, Marcus faced mental health challenges during his transition. When he did not see improvement with traditional treatments, Amber pursued alternative psychedelic therapy, which the couple attributes to saving his life as well as their family. So welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima Be the One podcast. Both of you, it's been wonderful to get to see your success, and I was so excited to chat with you today. So Marcus and Amber, thank you so much and welcome.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you so much for having us.
Here.
Yeah, Marcus and I, we connected several years ago. We went to the same program at University of San Diego. And I've watched you guys grow this into something really powerful with a lot of momentum. But take us back to really set the stage for your military service. Marcus, tell us, where are you from, really, and then how you end up joining the Navy SEALs?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Thanks for having us. So I actually grew up in New York. I grew up in Long Island, and I graduated high school in the late 90s and ended up in the Midwest to go to college. I played football on a scholarship at Southern Illinois University, and it's where I met Amber. And ironically, Amber's dad was my head coach. He was my quarterback coach. And that was quite a controversy at the time. But, things work out well as they did. And I had a year left to graduation when I decided that I wanted to go into the military. I really didn't grow up with a strong, I want to say military family. I mean, my grandfather served in World War II and my dad served. He was an MP. He actually was a dog handler. But I didn't grow up with, a ton of, if you want to call it like patriotism, in the household. I enlisted when I graduated in 2000, and I was in boot camp, of course, right away. And then I was in, BUDS SEAL training in 2001. And I was actually in third phase when the towers came down. And so I don't think we were prepared for, what was going to happen over the next 20 years. I came in, if you want to call it post or pre 9/11, and then post 9/11, of course, was a whole different circumstance. And so, it was exciting at the time. It was always exciting. I mean, I loved what I was doing. And I had my first deployment in 2003 and didn't stop until the end of 2010. It was time to take some time and try to reconnect with Amber and the kids. And really from that point on, it was more of consider a downward spiral for the next 7 years. But, we worked it out. It was a challenging time.
Well, luckily, such a success story, not without its ups and downs and emotional roller coaster. And Amber, you've been there, from the beginning. I didn't realize you guys go back all that way. When did you get married during your Navy career?
Right before Marcus went to BUDS, right before I went to boot camp, and then, subsequently BUDS. So in 2000, it was quite a 12 to 24 month period, to go from college students to husband, wife, parents in the military. 9/11 happened. And then, of course, you just have to grit and hold on for dear life in the years following that. So I think that, as a spouse and as his family, we were anxiously waiting for the deployment cycles to end thinking that things would just be normal again. They absolutely were not.
Well, you guys have been together through this whole journey. And so, Amber, give us your perspective of, were you really ready for what was about ready to happen? You probably didn't know. And so you've had to learn on the go. And what have you learned through that journey as far as transition into the civilian life, and then how you guys started getting more into and creating the VETS Foundation?
I would say the common themes that actually run through the special operations community in general, which is just like, expect the unexpected, learn to figure it out, think unconventionally, be a problem solver, help your community, and do the right thing. I'd say that, the takeaway from the last 20 years is that, the spirit of just this determination is still very much alive. Not only in our family, but in the veteran families that we are serving. It doesn't mean that they're not absolutely exhausted, though. And, we've really tried to come alongside them and fight for these other families just as hard as we fought for our own.
And, you look back 20 years ago and you say, would have never saw yourselves as a leader in this emerging therapies and, national spokespeople, and really, galvanizing a whole community, especially within special operations. Can you tell us, kind of where does that come from, the strength and the how to that you guys have now?
You want to take?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll take the beginning of it. I mean, in all honesty, Amy, I dislike having to talk about this pretty regularly. The way I'm able to do it now is this is not about me. And so as long as I feel that every time I open my mouth or do an interview or a podcast, or I'm on something in an article, I'm speaking for, I think, a large portion of individuals, and it's helped me be able to continue on with my own mental health success as I go forward, because there's definitely a lot of ups and downs, and I didn't join the military to be a spokesperson and be out in front of the camera, and it's I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult, because it's just not something I enjoy waking up to and doing every day. But the more I can think that every time I do open my mouth, if an individual or their family gets better, or they get saved, or I save a life, or I mean, I don't save a life, but a life gets saved, then I feel like, we're doing the right things, and we should continue on, with this mission. It's still uncomfortable, but I kind of put myself in the back seat, and this is for everyone else. So it's kind of how I'm able to continue being a spokesperson for what we're doing.
And just to add on to that, no, we never, ever in a million years saw ourselves as leading a movement, or being part of leading a movement, especially one that is so misunderstood and stigmatized. We never thought that we would be spokespeople for healthy relationships and fight. Yeah, we'll fight all day long. Most of the time we're fighting each other, and we've actually learned to fight together and to fight for everyone else, and to continue our own personal healing journeys as well. So I feel like it's the right thing to do, and at the end of the day, we have to do it regardless of how uncomfortable it can be. When families who've been impacted by suicide, and how close that felt, for your own family at one point, the conviction is just too great not to do something about it.
Well, I know you guys are a big inspiration, especially for the couples and the family units out there that are looking for examples of success and ways to stay together, even though there's probably been times where you wanted to walk away and be done with it. But you're still together, and through that journey, you guys can share with other people. And I guarantee there are people out there, veterans, who have never heard about these psychedelic treatments that you are exploring and talking about. Can you share a little bit or describe how that came into your life, and the early days of what you were exploring with and learning about?
Yeah, Amy, I can start. 'Cause, it started with my own kind of healing, but I would think I think in I don't know, it was 2006 or seven. I went and visited my first we call therapist or psychologist, and I started having struggles at that time. And fast forward, from 2010 to 2017, I had visited multiple brain clinics, multiple therapists, different doctors, different prescribers. And it was frustrating because I was listening to professionals, experts in their field of medicine on how to get better, and I wasn't getting better. I was really struggling with depression. I don't know where it came from. I feel like one day it just showed up and it didn't want to go away. And the more I tried, the worse it got. And what data shows us and people don't talk about is every time an individual that's struggling with mental health does some type of treatment that doesn't work, they relapse even further, and so, an individual that's continually trying to find solutions that doesn't get better, they wind up getting worse than where their baseline was. And so for me, 7 years of this was really daunting. And I thought, is this what the next 40 years is supposed to be like? Like, I'm not going to be able to handle another 40 years like this of isolating, of anger outbursts, of just real risky behavior. And it came to a point where I thought Amber and the kids would be better off living here without me, because I felt like such a burden. And that's the issue with this mental health crisis that we're dealing with, especially soldiers that are dealing with PTSD and really struggling with some of this stuff, is that we feel like we're burdening everyone. We're not important, and everyone would be better without us. And it's such a false voice in your head. It's our ego somehow trying to protect us, but it's not. It's just making it worse. And so I was at that point in 2017 where I would have tried anything. I was looking into alternative therapies. I looked into a ton of things, and this kind of popped up. Amber had been working with a doctor, kind of in the background, searching for any solutions, and brought it to my attention early in 2017. Initially, I thought it was crazy. Like most people, just not, I would say educated in terms of what these medicines were initially intended for, which was mental health treatment, not for recreational party use. And so it took me about a year to commit. But once, I did the research, it made more sense. And I became more comfortable with knowing that I was just doing another medicine, a quite powerful medicine that needs to be, taken carefully, clinically guided under, the proper medical supervision. But when done in that way, I feel there's no other more powerful treatment protocol that we can look into for the future of mental health care. And so, I took a shot. Amber has her side of the story also.
Yeah, what were you thinking when you approached this and said, hey, Marcus, let's try this? Or is this something you're willing to look into?
Well, like many military spouses who are not prepared for the transition struggles, I was actually considering leaving Marcus and had more or less made up my mind to do that. And in preparing to do that, I realized that my kids would be impacted for the rest of their lives. And if Marcus didn't have the stabilizing force of a family, then the worst very well could happen. And we would all live with that for the rest of our lives. And I just thought, I have to do something that is out of my comfort zone, to know that I tried everything. I had known about this treatment from a very close, trusted friend, and I reapproached him with a very loving ultimatum, but also the commitment that I would never leave his side, and I would fight with him every day for the rest of my life, if he would commit to fighting this battle in a new way. And he was willing to try it, but he certainly was very pessimistic about it, as was I. I didn't really think anything would work, but I wanted to start the process of forgiving myself if the worst had happened. And of course, I was really hoping that that wasn't the case. But fast forward to dropping him off at the airport and just like literally breaking down in my car because I thought, I've got everything on the table right now. And if this doesn't work, I know what that means. It is not good. I flew to see him, and when he walked down the hall and came around the corner, it really was like being reunited with the person that I met so many years prior, you know, when I was just 17 years old. I didn't think it was possible to ever get that version of him back. I just wanted to stop the bleeding, and we found relief in 4 key areas of suffering that we were experiencing. Had you given us one of those areas, it would have been a game changer, but to have relief in all 4 was absolutely unimaginable. And these 4 areas are very common for all veterans who are suffering. It's, you know, number 1, repressed emotional trauma, in some cases going all the way back to childhood. Number 2, incredibly anti-addictive. So Marcus wasn't dealing with any addictions personally, but certainly we have a lot of grant recipients who are, or who have, you know, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol and the like, which I would say was our case. There was extreme neurological function that returned. And there was a spiritual connection, this sort of like purpose in his eyes again, this will to live, this feeling connected to himself, to God, to the earth, to friends, to life again. And nothing had been even a fraction of, you know, that level of efficacy. It was absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, we're so grateful that you have chosen to share those personal details about your marriage, about your life, that your state of mind back then after service. And so for those veterans out there who might be walking that path right now, in your shoes, you were, you know, back then, 10 years ago or so, what would you tell them about the journey that you've been through, and what to look for, what to look forward to on the other end?
You want to take that, Marcus? You want to speak directly, you know, to veterans?
Yeah, I mean, I could just, you know, I just say that there, you know, mental health is something that if you're struggling with it, you are, you know, we are going to have to deal with it for the rest of our lives. It's one of those things that, you know, doesn't just clean up after one treatment or, you know, 1 week of success. You know, I liken it to, you know, staying in shape or being healthy, or, you know, you name it. You know, you're always going to have to, I'd say, maintain or get better by continuous, you know, improvement or continuous types of treatments. Now, you know, for me, initially, this was like kind of stopping the bleeding. It was almost like putting a tourniquet on because, you know, at that point it was a really tough struggle. But once I got back, you know, I think where I was prior, you know, from there it was more maintenance, just, you know, constantly pushing forward and having a positive outlook, and then putting a lot of different, you know, plans in place in terms of, you know, eating well, sleeping well, cutting back on kind of vices, you know, just taking care of yourself. You know, if you need a therapist, talk to a therapist. If you need to, you know, do a certain treatment, go do a certain treatment. It's not a sign of weakness. You know, if you hurt your shoulder, you hurt your knee or your back, you go get it taken care of. And sometimes people need to do that for 6 months to over a year to get back to where they were. And so I try to tell folks that mental health, you know, can be the same thing, that it might be just a temporary, you know, injury, and that, you know, you may need to get a tune up. And once you're tuned up, you can go back to doing whatever you need to do, whether it's soldiering, policing, you know, working in a bank. It, you know, really doesn't matter. It's just, you know, you just kind of continue on the journey. So it's a journey. It's not, you know, the destination. We'd all like to have a destination, but it's a journey.
And I would say that the essence of the veteran community really is the fighting spirit. it is worth fighting another day. There is hope. And even just a glimmer of hope, I think, can encourage someone to continue to hang on. I've come to a lot of realizations over the last 6 years that completely turned my perception on its head. And one of those is that vulnerability is actually the truest show of strength. And asking for help not only can help, an individual, but can help a family unit, a community, countless others around that person. And the value of one life. I think back to the fear of losing Marcus, and I look at the impact that his life has made over the last 6 years, his one life, and will continue to make. The ripple out effect is immeasurable, and the little tiniest flame of hope can ignite into the most incredible blaze of life.
Well, and you guys are leading a real blazing a trail, I want to say, in this space. You're based in San Diego and Coronado. And so in the special operations community, what's been their reaction to your journey and you speaking out and showing people another path than the traditional VA path with meds and different things? What feedback have you gotten so far?
I think initially, people were scared. They didn't understand this. So I think this was a bit stigmatized at first, and that was in 2018. We've come a long way. We've had two of these molecules that received FDA breakthrough status. One will be coming through the FDA next year. The other will be coming through the FDA in 2025. There's a ton of research. There's over 235 clinical trials going on. This is very real. And I think, there's a lot of media buzz around it, and we just have to be careful that, the media buzz doesn't surpass the clinical data, but the clinical data is happening. So we're kind of taking the stories now and the buzz of, the kind of all the stories from the years. And now, we're able to pair it with actual evidence-based outcomes. And now we put those two together, it doesn't sound crazy anymore. And so we're receiving a lot more feedback in terms of, hey, you guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep going. When you started, literally people called Amber and I crazy, but I think that you have to be a little crazy to kind of innovate and break new ground. And we knew firsthand on the ground something that worked. Like, this wasn't something that someone told us. We saw it with our own eyes. We experienced it. And then as each individual that we were funding through our nonprofit VETS got better and their families got better, what other, you don't need a randomized clinical trial, right? I mean, the data was right in front of us. And so, it's nice to see now that, the VA, even the DOD, now we have lawmakers that are trying to appropriate funds for research. So it's all happening. And so we'll just, I don't think we need to do anything different except just continue on, Charlie might continue mission. So
I think that the special operations community, or the broader veteran community in general, have embraced this as a new battlefield. It certainly feels that way, and it feels as though you're fighting alone. And so this has given many veterans in the VETS community a new sense of purpose. They're trained to think unconventionally. They're trained to go back in for their buddies. And every person that comes through our program generally refers back at least 3 to 5 others, but they go back with them. They hold space for them. They encourage them along the way, and it gives them purpose as well.
That's great. And so with your foundation called VETS, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, what gave you the courage or the will and the idea really to build this? And then what you've built is such a coalition of other people who are on the same journey. You guys are now all rowing together. When did that spark happen for you?
Honestly, out of one of my closest friends' husband's funeral. He had died by suicide, and we were sitting in his funeral at the base chapel at Little Creek in Virginia. And I had been in that chapel so many times for war funerals, and this one felt totally different, especially because Chad was an elite performer and never showed signs of struggle. And I thought, if this can happen to Chad, it can happen to anyone. And if we don't find the courage to speak out, because about a year had passed and, you know, for our family and, you know, experiencing this relief, yet we were too afraid to speak out in a community that doesn't ask for help and doesn't say they've received it and doesn't talk about psychedelics. But I thought, you know, the conviction that I felt at that point was too great, that if we didn't do something, this would be the next wave of funerals to hit our community. And I don't know if we could handle that.
And so leading a nonprofit, I mean, it's literally a double full-time job. I know you guys have been working so hard to bring people in and build a community of trust and understanding. And in the business, you know, with your background, your education, Marcus, that you've gained over the past few years from top business schools in San Diego and USC, it's all come together for you. Do you feel a sense of, you know, pride but you still have a lot of work to do. I know you're committed, you're all in on this, but what's the vision going forward?
Yeah, I think the vision going forward is, you know, as I mentioned earlier, one, I think we definitely need to continue on, because now we're gaining steam. And so all the work we put in, people are listening. So this will just compound that. You know, we'll continue fighting for veterans. We'll continue funding. You know, we're doing a lot more advocacy work that I'll let Amber touch on, but I think that's important. You know, with VETS, we can fund roughly 250, let's say 300 a year max. But, you know, we just passed a few laws. We're going to be into the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And that's the idea, right, is to heal more people. And the way to do that is through, you know, through passing federal laws. And that's what we're working on for veterans. You know, outside of that, I started a business to expand into the non-veteran market, and that's Tara Mind. And really, the mission is similar to veterans. We're trying to provide safe and affordable access for psychedelic therapies for all individuals that are struggling and that are not getting the help from traditional approaches. And so from there, you know, we're speaking to, you know, hundreds of self-funded employers around the country, and then, you know, all the payers, because eventually we have to figure out a way to pay for these treatments. You know, it's great through VETS. We subsidize the complete treatment at, you know, north of $6,000 per individual. Most individuals just can't pay for that. And so that's, you know, what I'm working on, both inside VETS and outside of VETS.
Well, your partnership, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, your partnership with funding and those donors, are you seeing like anonymous donors? You're seeing big donors from corporations, or who would you say are your biggest supporters funding wise?
We don't have a lot of corporate donors. We have a lot of, it's really interesting, actually. We have donors from both sides of the political aisle, if you will. You know, we have the tried and true patriots who don't know a thing about psychedelics, but they're like, I've heard that this is the thing, this is saving lives, this is where my dollar will go the furthest or have the most impact. And then we have those who are just really passionate about psychedelic science, who've been advocating for years or decades upon deaf ears. And so they see this as an opportunity for veterans to really lead the way here in reducing stigmas and creating pathways to access for all. The data's there. You know, there's no disputing that the trials that have happened and have honestly been happening since the 1950s are very, very promising. We are not advocating for unregulated use, commercialization, legalization, decriminalization. We are advocating for safe, guided therapeutic use. The data substantiates it. The problem right now is that veterans are oftentimes excluded from the studies that are happening in the US. For one thing, it's very difficult to receive the DEA exemption to be able to work with Schedule I substances. And once those hoops are cleared, you're recruiting population, for enrollment should be really clean. One diagnosis, one potential treatment. Absolutely no history of suicidality in most cases. This just doesn't apply to veterans. So we are on the Hill just begging lawmakers to understand that the veteran population could benefit most from innovative treatments like this. Yet they're also the ones that are most excluded from trials that are currently ongoing. So we're educating, we're advocating. We envision a world where veterans who are willing to die for this country have the ability to access meaningful healing within the borders of it. This is not a one size fits all. It's not for everyone. Some would call it the nuclear option. There are compounds that are less nuclear, if you will, than others. And like Marcus mentioned, 2 of them will be coming through FDA within the next 2 years. So the first therapy that will be available, hopefully, is MDMA for PTSD, followed by psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression or major depressive disorder. Both of those could really have significant implications for the veteran population. We just need more funding. And of course, it would be wonderful if the treatments were accessible within the system set up to serve veterans, which is the VA.
Wonderful. Well, partnering with the American Legion, and we hosted the Be the One day-long symposium at the annual convention in Charlotte, North Carolina this year, and we missed you guys there. I know you were scheduled to talk, but Waco Hoover has been leading this initiative as the chair of that, and really sees some breakthroughs in strategic partnerships and alignments that can work with the VA and can get the donors and get the word out for veterans out there who are on the fence or not sure, or if there's people who want to donate to the organization. Can you give some insights onto how best can people put their resources, such as money or manpower, to good use for folks out there? How would you like to partner with people?
We're 100% donor dependent. So our runway is based upon the number of donors, the number of dollars that support us. And so we're always at the risk of extinction. We don't have many corporate sponsors at all or federal funding. Donations can be made through our website, which is vetsolutions.org. Our 85% of that funding is directly tied to our programs, which is sending veterans outside of the United States to access these therapies in countries where they're legal or unregulated with safe, vetted, clinically supervised retreat centers. We don't want to have to continue sending veterans abroad. They should be able to access these therapies here. So another really critical component of our work is that we fund research happening in the United States. We've published a paper with Ohio State. We have an ongoing study happening with them now on something else. We've collaborated with Stanford University on a study which should be released sometime soon, hopefully this year. And we're really moving the needle and getting psychedelic research specific to veterans right here in the US. The third pillar of VETS is advocacy. So we pair the real life stories from our resource programs into alongside the data, and we advocate for change, policy change at the state and federal levels. So we're trying to hit it from all angles. It's a lot of work, and we have to make the dollars go as far as we possibly can. But the great thing is the VETS staff is has all been personally impacted by our program in one way or another. And everyone is just really, really on fire to serve.
Well, you guys have definitely been leaders in that area. And you have your annual gala that happens every year you're going into, in 2024, it'll be the third year.
Fourth. Next year will be the fourth. This is the third.
Okay. So in 2024, you'll have your fourth year. And so people can put that on their calendars. And how is that a really, a key way to raise awareness and raise money as well?
Marcus, you can say a few things about this too, but what I'll say about the gala is it is our banner event where the most I would say diverse group of individuals comes together under one roof. So you have far right leaning individuals, you have far left leaning individuals, and everything in between. And for one night, we all unite around a common cause of doing the right thing. This year's theme is the Torch Bearers Ball. It signifies individuals who are willing to pick up their torches in the darkness and suffering that veterans are experiencing in an area that is so stigmatized and misunderstood, and lead in bringing awareness and hope back to not only the veteran community, but Americans overall. So this is a really fun time to get together, but the work is so important, and it is our annual signature fundraising event.
And happening in San Diego every year in Coronado. And so I've seen pictures from previous years. It looks amazing. And so people can, put that on their calendar for a special Veterans Day experience to be able to raise money and give back. But your strategic partnership and your alliance with the American Legion, with the Legion having posts spread throughout the country, why is that such a great way to get the word out and be able to partner with them?
I mean, I think it's just the Legion has such a powerful voice. I mean, I think when the Legion speaks about a topic, I think the US government listens, and especially the VA. The VA is the largest system in the world, and there's a lot of challenges that come along with that. And so I think getting the Legion aligned with our mission, which really is just ending veteran suicide. It's very simple. We look forward to more collaboration and trying to figure out how do we better collaborate, how do we introduce what we're doing somewhat quickly, because every day that we are late to the game, there's more veterans that are taking their own lives, and we're trying to stop that. And so we look forward to further conversation, bringing in true experts that can really talk about what this is doing for the brain and the body, and of course we can talk about what it's doing for individuals and families. And so yeah, this is just exciting to start. I mean, I would have never thought a few years ago we'd be having these conversations, maybe around veterans, but now even individuals like Representative Stan Crenshaw and Representative Morgan Luttrell, who are really trying to appropriate funds for active duty, for the ones who need it. We're not saying this is for everyone, but these are for individuals that have raised their hand, that have gone to see a specialist for help. And so we think that these treatments should be available for those.
Well, and having those influential people on your side and advocate for what you're doing is very helpful. So before we bring it to a close, I'd like to know what secrets can you share with the audience of a successful marriage with you guys and working together, and what would you tell other couples out there who are struggling with this issue now? Because there's always going to be a next generation of veterans who are going to walk that same path with you as you did. But what would you tell them, and how would you encourage them?
I think, complete surrender to your partner. Don't bring your work home. Your spouse and your kids are not the individuals you're working with by any means. They might be 180 to the individuals that you're working with. And so, you don't need an ego. This is your family. And, they already know you're a big, bad, tough individual. You don't have to, that doesn't have to come into the household. And, you need to meet your spouse halfway. The more you come through the front door or kick in the front door with your spouse, the more the further struggles you're going to have. You really have to kind of just surrender and allow things to happen and conversations to happen. And you need to allow each other to talk and get out what they need to. And you don't have to judge or solve problems every time that one opens their mouth. And so, for individuals, many of us, that's very difficult if we were programmed a certain way. So you do have to reprogram yourself. to allow, healing and just, I don't know if you want to call it normalcy to happen. And that's what's worked for us. I worked on myself, Amber worked on herself, and the less we fought each other on really issues that are so not important, but that can cause such strife, the better we became, the closer we became.
I would also say much of the same thing, that I needed to be on my own healing journey, and Marcus needed to be on his as well, and then we needed to be on a journey together as a couple. I always wanted to point the finger and paint the picture that Marcus was the problem, when in reality I had plenty of things to work on as well, and we were very dug into who was right and who was wrong and keeping score. When we stopped doing that, we started to come together, and we realized that we're headed towards the same finish line. We were just fighting each other the entire way there, and that was completely unnecessary.
And Amy, I didn't see that honestly until, just a week of these treatments. I mean, this almost did it for me, rather quickly. And, we still, everyone's human, but it's so much easier to resolve now than it was. But for me, years of therapy and antidepressants and, other things just didn't do it, right? It just didn't do it for me. And this happened just so fast. And once you see it, you kind of wake up and go, oh my goodness, like this is how I was acting, or this is what this looks like. You really are able to make those changes like really quickly.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, your personal struggles, and how you guys have worked together as a couple. And now you're leading the way and partnering with the American Legion. We wish you much continued success in this. And can you tell everyone where we can learn more about Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, or VETS? So in case they want to get involved or support you, where can we find you?
Our website is vetsolutions.org. We are on 5 social media platforms as well. All can be found on our website. We also have a free e-course, which I should highlight because it's really comprehensive and very helpful for anyone who is just learning about these therapies and have questions. It's geared specifically towards veterans and is pretty much just psychedelics 101 for veteran issues. But honestly, anyone could benefit from going through the e-course.
I love that, because then it helps people learn a little bit as they go before you maybe jumping in or looking for, before they pick up the phone and call and find out how to get involved. Wonderful. Well, we will put that all in the show notes so people can get on board and start following and listening and continuing the conversation really about this, because I guarantee there's still a lot of people who don't know, don't want to know, think it's not real or doesn't have any good success. But we appreciate you sharing your story of success and what you're moving towards. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Alphas, for tuning into the Tango Alpha Lima Be the One podcast. Remember, you can be the one to save one veteran. Find resources and more information at betheone.org, and connect with the American Legion on social media to keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast on YouTube, Apple's Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. And please share this podcast. People will want to hear it. It's fascinating. You can learn a lot. And we appreciate the Capones for being here. And we'll see you on the 1st of next month. Thank you so much. On the first day of every month, American Legion family members are encouraged to wear Be the One apparel to publicly show their commitment to reducing the stigma around mental health issues. Go to betheone.org to learn how you can be the one to save one veteran. If you're a veteran in crisis or concerned about one, call the Veterans Crisis Line at 988 and press 1. You're not alone. The Veterans Crisis Line is here for you, and you don't have to be enrolled in the VA. Help is available, and speak with someone today.